Man, the Jets look good, but if you know how I know, they got to get even better to beat the best. And there's something that they can do to actually do that. Hassan Reddick, you hear me? We'll talk to you about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And you know it, man. Welcome to the barbershop and welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I'm the host, Tony the Barber Wiggins, joined by my man, longtime NFL scout, Matt Williamson of Peacock and Williamson Podcast. On today's episode, here's what Matt and I are going to get into. We're going to talk about the Sunday preview and do a whip around at the end of the show, all the games, and pick out some real good games and make some sort of prediction on all of them. Right in the middle, Jaden Daniels has quietly become the guy that a lot of people thought he was prior to the draft. And there's one thing in particular that he's done that veterans do and that rookies struggle with, and he's not struggling with it. But first, the Jets are impressive, and I think they need one more piece in order to make that puzzle work. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and for being an everydayer here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again on Locked On NFL on Monday morning for the madman Tyler Rowland for more NFL coverage. Today's show and episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. That's right. PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. Matt, I need your opinions on some stuff. I'm ready to get into it. I wanted to really focus on the fact that a lot of questions coming in this game last night was about Aaron Rodgers and his mobility. Around the end of the game, I saw him scrambling and running fast and sliding, and I was like, hey, we might have the old Aaron back for a second.
Sure looks like it. I mean, he has thrown the ball very well all year, which probably shouldn't shock anyone. He's about as good a thrower of the football as I've ever seen, frankly. And his command of the offense and his feel and his presence was really, really strong last night, too. Working on a short week, you know, the Patriots were frankly overwhelmed, and they look like a very bad team. We can talk about them in a minute. But I thought Rodgers took advantage of a good situation for him as well as his team, and the Patriots have a lot of issues, and Rodgers is really impressive. I mean, we'll see what he looks like in 2 months, you know, the rigors of the season on his old bones, but I was impressed.
Yeah, man, I was impressed too. Very, very impressed. Kind of reminded us of why Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. So I look at the Jets from a macro perspective, and I really do like their team. I like the defense. I like that they have a great player on every level, Sauce Gardner on the back end, and then the Williams brothers in the front seven. They have players that are really, really good. But in order to win it, and you can see this with the teams that have won it, you always need more people and more pieces. Well, they got a piece out there hanging in limbo. And I want to listen to what John Butchko said. This wasn't even yesterday. This was like a week ago when things really broke down between Hassan Reddick and the Jets. And then we'll share an opinion on who has the most leverage. Check this out.
Things went bad on Monday as Hassan Reddick, the star pass rusher who's holding out, has asked for a trade, which is interesting. And it's the first situation like this I can remember because, as you probably know, Hassan Reddick's been a member of the New York Jets for less than 5 months. He has yet to officially practice with the team. And I can't remember a comparable situation where a team trades for a player and before he even hits the practice field, he wants out. He wants to go to a new team. And if you have not been following the situation, Hassan Reddick sat out of the offseason program after the trade because he wanted a new contract. Now he's holding out of training camp. He's been fined over $1 million. We are closing in on $2 million worth of fines for Hassan Reddick. The holdout, there's no end in sight. You know, the first couple of days of training camp, there were reports that Jets and Reddick were making progress, but that seems to be out the window now as Reddick now wants out, and which at least the question was he ever in.
You are Locked On Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
All right, my man John Butchko, of course, you just saw us Locked On Jets. who has the leverage? Does he have the leverage because he knows that they need him? And Jermaine Johnson is now out with an Achilles. But I'm also thinking that you get good, you're going to get a contract. Whatever you're going to get, you're going to get, right? The money you're losing now, you'll never get back. And the way that you see the Jets play, one of the ways to get paid is to play for a team that wins, and they look like they can win. And all you got to do is go in and play your role, and you'll get your money.
So you mentioned Johnson, the first-round pick from 2 years ago. I was really high on him, and I think he's looked even better in the league. So that is a substantial loss. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention last year's first-round pick, Will McDonald. He has 5 sacks over the last 2 games. I mean, that's pretty good. But we know this team wants to bring waves. They want to bring hockey lines at defensive linemen. I don't know who has more leverage. I would say Reddick, but I think the situation's insane. I mean, he just mentioned that he has not seen a situation where someone trades for a player and then trades the player shortly after. Well, this is on the Jets. I can't remember a time when you trade for a player that's not happy with his contract and you don't have a new contract lined up. Do you think he's still going to be happy with it? What are we doing here?
Right. I mean, it seems like the Jets kind of got what they were asking for. I think, though, with them being 2-1, I think a phone call could be made and say, look, man, let's do something. Let's get him in. Now that Jermaine Johnson's not there, add to McDonald, and now you're going to have to be able to disrupt the passer, and you're going to have to be able to do it with 4 people if you're going to win the games that we're talking about them winning. Mm-hmm. Speaking of teams that's losing, there was a losing team last night in the Patriots, and we know this is the Patriots we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the season, and they start the year off beating a team like Cincinnati, who may have been looking towards week 2, but now they're 0-2. I think the Bengals are in a little bit of trouble, and they need to really make sure that they get healthy and get one of their key players back, because I got a feeling that you're going to look down the line and that 0-2 game is going to be something that we're going to remember. Listen, check this out by Locked On Bengals.
T. Higgins was back at practice for the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday as they began preparations. This is the most significant of the injury news we're going to talk about in this episode. It's just that when T returns to practice, he transforms the offense, and that's why you have to start there.
Yeah, and I think the extra day this week is huge for him. You have a shot here to give him back-to-back rest days, and that's probably why on Sunday he was able to get a legitimate pre-game workout in where he's working up a sweat, going through warm-ups essentially, and then you get out there today and there's a little hill as you go up the Bengals practice field. He sprints up that and didn't do a lot during the portion of practice that was open to the media, caught passes and things, but that's what every receiver is doing unless you're on special teams. So we'll see if he can get, to me, what I'm looking for. I expect him to be limited again on Friday. Won't be shocked by that at all. Saturday, can he be full Saturday? Saturday's pretty light day, and it's a glorified walkthrough to an extent, a little more than that, but not a ton. And so if he can be full on Saturday, you feel pretty darn good about his chances.
The Bengals defense has shown you what they're capable of in 2 weeks, in 2 losses. They haven't been pushed around by the Kansas City Chiefs last week. They lost the game where they could barely score points the week before. I think the only way that these 2 losses in that crowded AFC won't help them is if they give the offense, if T. Higgins can get healthy and they become so dynamic, and now Lou Anarumo's defense can continue to do what it's been doing. They got to get T. Higgins back, though, to help free up Jamar Chase.
100%. And I haven't been super impressed with what we've seen from Burrow by his usual standards through 2 weeks, but I'm sure he'll get it right. Yeah. And I do think Higgins coming back can really jumpstart one of the best passing games in the league. 2 notes here, though, is Coach Taylor with the Bengals never plays his guys in the preseason. The last 3 years in week 1 and 2, they're 0-6. They've historically started slow every year, and they never learn from it, and they do the same things over and over. But fortunately for them, 3 of their next 4 games are the Commanders, Panthers, and Giants, with the 0-2 Ravens sprinkled in there in a couple weeks too. So they have a great chance to get this thing right despite their mistakes to start the season.
Yeah, they better hope so. Trust me, I cover a team here that it went down to week 18 to see if they were going to make the playoffs. And one time it worked, the next time it didn't. That's the Jaguars in successive years playing the Titans to get in. And that's a bad way to have to look back at the season. Like you look back and you lost in week 1 versus one of the worst teams in the National Football League. We got more to come.
New England
here.
looks terrible, by the way. New England
they look awful. They look awful. We got more to come. We're going to talk about a rookie quarterback, not the one everybody's talking about that went number 1, but the one that went a couple of spots behind him, and he's doing something very impressive that I know Matt, with his scouts hat on, is going to be very impressed with. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. But first, I got to let you know about today's sponsor, and that sponsor is FanDuel, man. FanDuel is the absolute truth because it's America's #1 sports book. Y'all know the deal with FanDuel, especially with me, man. I love me some FanDuel. I almost look more forward to playing FanDuel on the weekend than I do watching the games. Well, they have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just $5. Now imagine you're in the military and you're not in your hometown, but you want to see your hometown team. This is how you do it. All you got to do is do exactly what I just said. And then with YouTube TV, a base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Jaden Daniels, there was a lot of talk about Jaden Daniels. There were people like Dan Orlovsky, who I respect, that thought Jaden Daniels was probably going to be the better quarterback. Now, it's easy to make those type of statements when you don't have to make the actual draft choice. And Chicago obviously went with young Mr. Williams out of USC. I was about to say Oklahoma with the way things are going these days, but he's from Southern California, and there have been mixed results so far. No mixed results about a certain aspect of Jaden Daniels' game. And here is my man, David Harrison. He's going to tell you exactly what I'm talking about.
The Giants blitzed Jaden Daniels 12 times. In those 12, Jaden was 9 for 9 for 129 yards, sacked 3 times for a total loss of 11 yards. 2 of those 3 sacks, might say the Giants just won. It's going to happen from time to time. 2 of the blitzes, the Washington Commanders had wide receiver screens dialed up. Here's the good news. Of the remaining 7 blitzes, Jaden completed all 7 of those passes. And in this order, he completed passes for yards of 3 yards, 20, 14, 5, 15, 15, 27, and 34. As the game was going on, Jaden Daniels was not only anticipating the blitz better, he was reading it better, he was reacting to it better, and he was delivering against it much, much better. The last blitz he faced was the one where he threw the pass to Noah Brown for a 34-yard gain, which helped set up the game-winning field goal. And that is exactly the type of progression you want to see from a quarterback.
I'm not going to overtalk it. I'm going to allow you, the scout, to really tap into this. But I know with what you just heard David say from Locked On Commanders, there's a lot of gold in there. And I'm not just talking about in those games. I'm talking about gold as in what the kid is made of and the fact that he's processing really, really fast.
Processing was the word I was about to use. You beat me to it. I love it because a couple things that stand out to me, and I didn't even know we were going down this road with blitz, because he is processing things really quickly. His accuracy has been quite good for a rookie and more than good enough for a veteran. But what stands out to me are 2 things, and it goes along these lines. He has the shortest time to throw in the entire league, 2.33 seconds. I mean, that's Tom Brady-like stuff. I mean, you're getting the ball out in 2.3, 2.4. That is really something. I mean, that is boom, boom. That's quicker than Tua. That's number 1 in the whole league. And I don't have the exact stat, but blitz aside, when he has been pressured, when he is considered pressured by the statisticians, he runs on like 75% of those attempts. So when the pressure comes, I'm sure he's been coached, just use your wheels, get out of problems, and it's worked out really, really well. So he's either processing quick and the ball comes out, or pressure comes and he gets out.
Isn't it and that's very astute, by the way, but isn't it something? It's got to be something to be said about also the fact that he's playing in a market. A lot of people don't realize those fans are rabid up there and they want a winner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's playing in a market behind a shaky offensive line with a first-year coach, first-year offensive coordinator. It seems like teams are throwing the book at him. Not only the fact that he's processing it and he's handling it from a football perspective, but from a mental perspective. When you see what has happened in Carolina, when you see the careers of Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold have to be delayed, and then when you see Caleb Williams running around and taking a lot of hits and a lot of losses, there has to be something too that makes folks really, really happy about, oh, long term, we got us something here, because he's unfazed by all of those changes.
Yeah, I think that's big. And I always go back to this organization as this whole year to me is getting the Daniel Snyder stink out of the building. You know, new ownership, the worst owners in the league. They brought in a lot of veterans like Bobby Wagner and Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz that aren't great players anymore, but are going to be leaders and bring a culture to the place. And they bring in a high character young quarterback that's handling things extremely well and looks like he's going to be the guy that's on billboards for the next decades, you know?
He does. And we're going to shift to Denver because Denver still has questions. There are a lot of people that question the selection of Bo Nix. In fact, there are a lot of people that question a lot of the selection of the Denver brass. And I think that brass it includes Sean Payton. And we've seen in the past where maybe a coach that has so much influence on personnel, sometimes that can actually circumvent the fact that he's a really good coach, i.e. Tom Coughlin when he was in Jacksonville before he went and won in New York, Belichick at the end where he was doing a lot of the personnel stuff himself. I think Sean Payton might be falling into that just a little bit. I want to hear from Locked On Broncos right now about the offense and how that looks.
There's always plenty of blame to go around after a loss or a couple of losses in the Denver Broncos case, but is Sean Payton the problem right now? And now you're going up against Tampa Bay, that's kind of a well-oiled machine on that side of the ball, as well as the New York Jets, who certainly don't make life easy on opposing quarterbacks. And those two defensive coaches, Todd Bowles and Robert Saleh, respectively, are going to be licking their chops as they get an opportunity here to go up against a rookie quarterback. But hopefully we continue to see steps forward from Bo Nix. Hopefully we continue to see strides made here for the Denver Broncos. Progress is what it's all about right now, Broncos country. It's easy and understandable, justifiable even, to be frustrated with the way that the Broncos offense is playing right now, but hopefully brighter days ahead. Hopefully mistakes and issues get corrected, and hopefully we see Sean Payton at the forefront of all of those things.
All right,
so we just got that from Locked On Broncos. We just talked about Jaden Daniels. It's inevitable to make a side-by-side comparison. We do it in the barbershop all the time. Side-by-side comparison. But this is year 2. Sean Payton doesn't have Drew Brees anymore. People are getting restless out there in Denver. What do you think about what my man just said from Locked On Broncos?
Couple things. Well, first off, my Steelers were just out there, so I really dug into this football team. And they don't have very many good players. I mean, and that's a big problem. And part of it's because of the Wilson trade, but part of it's because their team building isn't great. But we also just talked about ownership. And I think a lot of our listeners think all 32 of these teams' ownership is the same. And they couldn't be any more wrong. I mean, Apple and IBM don't run their corporations the same way. I mean, it's 32 different corporations that make a lot of money. And I think new ownership, Denver qualifies, makes a lot of mistakes. And I think you can take advantage of new owners in this league. And from what I understand, they basically gave a blank check to Sean Payton saying, you're in charge of our whole organization, despite him being out of the league a little bit and maybe losing a little bit of touch with how fast this league changes. And I think he's a very stubborn coach, team builder that refuses to try to put a round peg in a square hole and change his offense in any way, shape, or form. He didn't adjust to Wilson one bit. And I think that they're paying the price for it. And Nick should probably have been an early second rounder, but they take him in the first because it's Sean Payton's guy, you know, and just because you're good at running Walmart doesn't mean you're good at beating the Chiefs, Chargers, and Raiders, you know?
Right. You're exactly right, man. And I've seen it so many times in the past where really, really good coach gets a whole bunch of power and no one takes into consideration that, okay, well, while you're doing that other job, you're not as good of a coach now because your mind and your discipline can't be in two different places.
Real quick, Wig, I thought it's like the last 5 or 6 years of Belichick's career, maybe even longer, Belichick, the coach, made up for Belichick, the GM, in a big way.
I think the same thing. I think about him all the time when we talk about that. And I think about Tom Coughlin when he was everything in Jacksonville the first go around, and they fell a little bit short twice. Then he goes to New York and wins a couple of Super Bowls. And you think, man, maybe if he had a GM here and he didn't have to wear all of those hats, the Jaguars would have had a little bit of, they had the best team, I think, in one of those years. They had the best team. I think it was 1999. And they only lost 3 games, and it was all to one team, Jeff Fisher and the Tennessee Titans. So we've seen it in the past, man. And hopefully
too big a job for one guy.
Yeah, it's too big a job for one guy. All right. So the Atlanta Falcons won a big game the other night, but they have a huge test coming up this weekend. We're going to look at that game, look at Dallas and Baltimore, and then make a whip around the National Football League and let Matt do his thing and make some predictions. We'll do that in just a second here on the third and final segment of Locked On NFL. After I let y'all know about PrizePicks, today's sponsor, that's right, man. Y'all know I'll talk about PrizePicks all the time because PrizePicks is the real deal. It is the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the United States of America. I play it all the time, and you can play it too. It's real easy. Now, they got 5 million active members, but guess what? You only have to play against one entity, and that is the house. All you have to do is pick between 2 and 6 correct, more or less projections on statistics, and guess what? That money will start rolling in your pocket so fast it'll make your head spin. And I know we all love money. It's all players, all stats. That's all you're selecting, man. Like, who's going to have more yards? Is this guy going to go over this number? Is he going to go less than this number? That's what you have to do. It's more or less. All right. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's it. That's the code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play just $5, man. And I'm talking about you're going to have so much fun watching the game. Imagine all the fun you have if you win money while you're watching the game. Do that at PrizePicks, man. Do not wait. Go to prizepicks.com, download the app, and use Locked On NFL. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right. We are back. And we didn't really go anywhere, but we're here to give it all to you. We're going to do a quick rundown here of the National Football League games coming up this weekend. One of them I want to talk about. The Falcons played really, really well against a really good team in the Eagles. They got their offense going late. Of course, they had a little bit of help from Coach Sirianni. They ain't getting that kind of help from Andy Reid. But listen to the key matchup from the Falcons going against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Can the Falcons' offensive line pass another test and keep Chris Jones in check? Talking about the big challenge for the Falcons in the trenches this week with Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones. All summer long, I've been talking about the challenges that the Falcons offensive line would face specifically in these first 3 games going up against these very good defensive lines. They did not pass that test in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They passed the test absolutely in week 2 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And Jarvis, I looked at the stats today because I was talking with Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs yesterday and talking about how Chris Jones seems to line up everywhere on the defensive line. And, you know,
I feel like I'm not surprised at all that he's lined up on the edge. And then we gave me the percentage of where he lines up the most at left defensive end. A lot of times the really good ones, they line up on that side because ideally that's your worst tackle. This week for the Falcons, they have to establish the running game again because there is a thing that I feel that, you know, based off the tape that they put out last week, their teams are going to start saying, oh, so y'all do want to run the football. That is who you are. So now they know that you're going to run the football. I want to see what that looks like now.
I never thought I'd say this, but there's a modern day player that's over 300 pounds that has the inside outside presence of Reggie White, and it's Chris Jones. And Chris Jones, if it wasn't for Aaron Donald, would be in the serious GOAT conversation. And if he keeps going like this for the next couple of years and they keep winning, that's exactly what he's going to be.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that, but I do like that Aaron brought up the offensive line. Like, everyone was focused on Cousins week 1 versus week 2, but the offensive line is the foundation of probably that entire team. And it started to look like it in Philadelphia. And I think that they'll be something that you can lean on. It gives an offense a high floor when you have a line like that. Jones is going to cause a lot of problems. He's an absolute beast. But this is going to be a stiff test all around. I don't think Kansas City's real happy with how they played last week.
I don't either. But one thing I am happy about is the Bijan Robinson usage.
Yeah.
I just think I'm like, you pick a guy like that, he's that dynamic. Man, just go ahead and build everything and run everything through him and see what you can do, whether it's in the run game or the pass game. We saw him have a good game. Saquon have a good game. Alvin Kamara had a good game. So these dual running backs will, if they do that, let me just get to it. If they do that, do you think they have a shot, or is that their only shot to upset Kansas City?
I'm more worried about the Falcons defense, but I'm glad you mentioned Bijan. I wanted to do that as well because there are a few foundational backs that you can build your entire offense around, and I absolutely think he's at the top of that list and will be absolutely key in this game. But I worry more about the Falcons defense and the pass rush.
I got you. I probably would do the exact same thing. All right, a quick run around. Let's go ahead and go through it. Some 1 o'clock games. What do you think about Giants at the Browns?
I think the Giants are a little underrated. They're not a good team. And I think the Browns are still very problematic at the quarterback position, but the Browns D rules the day here.
2 young quarterbacks going at it in Indy. Bears visit the Colts.
I really dislike where the Colts are at right now. Both these guys are struggling to complete passes, but that Colt defense can't stop the run at all. And now Buckner's out of the equation. I think the Bears start to get back on track a little bit.
Yeah, the Bears better commit to running it. That's what they better do. How about a good game of 2-0 teams? Houston going up to face the all of a sudden upstart, chest out, head upright Minnesota Vikings.
Tough test. I mean, I think Flores is a phenomenal defensive schemer and play caller that's going to cause problems. I think Houston's just playing at a really high level right now. I'll take the Texans.
I do too. Can the Saints do it again, this time at home? And now nobody's going to let them sneak up on them, but the Eagles might have some problems with their leadership.
I'm torn here because I'm really impressed with the Saints, but I don't know that their offensive line can keep it up. I think the Eagles are just a little more trustworthy and win this game.
All right, your neck of the woods. Chargers bring all of that running game up there to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, these two teams play exactly the same way. You know, they're going to be run the ball. We've been joking all week. This is going to be a 2-hour game. We'll be home before you know it. I like the Steelers in this one. I think the Steelers defense is clearly the best of the 4 units. And kind of like we just talked about the Saints, when you play the Panthers as one of your 2 teams, you got to kind of throw some of those stats out because they're that bad.
Yeah, I'll go real quick here. I think both of us will agree that the Bucs will handle Denver.
Yep.
Green Bay will figure out a way to go handle Tennessee and Will Levis. The coach said he needs to. The coach, whenever you hear a coach say he's a grown man, you got some issues going on with your quarterback. He said it, man. He said he's a grown man. What are you talking about? You know, the Panthers aren't going to win at the Raiders. The Raiders are just too tough in areas where the Panthers are not strong. The Dolphins have to figure out what that young kid is going to do at quarterback. I think going up to Seattle is not a good spot for him. Now, let's get to these games. Lions at Cardinals.
I think the Lions bounce back. I really like what the Cardinals are doing, but I think the Cardinals defense is just lacking talent in a big way.
The 49ers traveled down the coast a little bit to play the Los Angeles Rams.
I think this is a blowout. I think the Rams that can't block them, and I don't think they have the firepower, and I don't think their defense is very impressive right now. I know that there's some injuries for San Fran, but I don't care one bit.
I think this is just what the doctor ordered for San Fran.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a massacre in L.A. And finally, the one game that we did not get to, and I think it's a good one. I think it's very, very compelling for a lot of reasons. The Baltimore Ravens take their winless selves to Dallas, who got mud drugged last week in their own stadium. They got to try to figure out a way to prevent that.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling on this one because I can't live with myself saying, "Oh, I'm going to predict the Ravens to be 0-3." And this is a game they absolutely need. Their upcoming schedule, unlike the winless Bengals, is really, really difficult. But man, they have some issues in Baltimore right now, namely the offensive line, and I think Parsons could really cause problems. I'm just going to bet on Harbaugh to figure this thing out.
Yeah, man. The only thing about that is, I never thought we'd say the Ravens have offensive line problems because through the years they kept losing guys and they kept just replenishing them. But then you wouldn't think that it would have a huge effect. An offensive line wouldn't have a huge effect on a team that has Lamar Jackson at quarterback, but it absolutely does. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL every single day because you know what? There's a double dose of it. The new Locked On NFL, you get Tyler Rowland, the Madman, early with the double shot of NFL Espresso. And then just like me and Matt just did, what we do every Friday, you come on, slide through the barbershop, just hang out and get a nice, easy dose of everything that's going on in the NFL. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Matt, man, have a good weekend. We will talk next Friday here on Locked On NFL. Y'all enjoy your football weekend. Make sure you tap back in first thing Monday morning. We'll see you.